Speaking of the battle itself, obviously we could have a whole panel probably about those two episodes, but we have to limit it to a few questions. But speaking of the battle itself, I read that originally it was based on the Battle of Agincourt, which took place between the French and the English in 1415, but as needs changed, this is your quote, as did budgets, it became more like the Battle of Cannae between the Romans and Hannibal in 216. Can you talk a little bit about what you meant by that? What changed and how you changed it?
Blimey. Originally when we talked about it, the whole idea was to steep it in history. So they wanted a strategic, pitched battle. And so the Battle of Agincourt was, I believe it's the French and the English, wasn't it? French and the English fought it out on a field, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might screw this up completely, the English attacked and the French encircled them and caught them in a pincer movement, a double envelopment, and once they had them in pincer movement, they basically used archers to mow these people down. And originally we were going to have a lot of horses, like 7 horses deep, and they were going to charge the horses and then actually surround the Allied troops and crush them with the horses. But the problem is, if you run horses at people, they don't like it. Like the first time they're alright, but the second time they're like, I don't really want to run at these people. And the third time they're like, I'm not going. So
I'm guessing the people don't like it either.
Well, sometimes. So the decision is that we weren't going to run horses at people, but instead we were going to run people at people. And then there was this other idea, which I always loved, and was probably the first image that I imagined in my mind when I saw when I read the outline, which was this pile of bodies. And this was something Dave and Dan were really keen on, and something that actually we had a lot of kind of back and forth, because initially it felt like, where does this pile of bodies come from? And then the more research you did, you started realizing when everybody dies, they become a pile of bodies. And gradually this pile of bodies really gets in the way of you achieving anything on a battlefield. And in fact, in the Battle of, is it Cannae? The Battle of Cannae, what was happening is these heavily armored knights were going down into battle, and they were getting stuck between piles of bodies, of dead bodies, and they were becoming sitting ducks to then be picked off, which seemed horrible and a complete bummer to go out to battle and then get your foot stuck somewhere and get picked off. So that seemed like a good way to approach the battle, which is what we did.
And in terms of budget constraints, did that have something to do with it, or was it just?
The not using horses that definitely was a budget constraint. I think any time you do something this big, you always start with something that's bigger than you actually have the money to do. And then what you come up with is creative ways to turn that disadvantage into an advantage. So there's so many things in Hard Home. The year before was the same thing. In this one, one of the reasons that we originally decided to have the wall of shields that arises was because we didn't really have the money to see what was behind the wall of shields, because we would have had to stage all the fighting and dead bodies, etc., etc. We just didn't have the money to do it. Even when we were doing the body pile, we had 257 bodies, and that doesn't quite cover the body pile. So between setups, 10 people in the art department would basically run and move all the bodies to another place, and then move bodies to another place. And it was all about trying to cover this big pile of chicken wire that we didn't have the money to cover.
Well, I saw that you're not on the list for directors this year, but we can expect you back next year?
I would very much hope so, yes.